We're still in the conspiracy section, and this particular section of the conspiracy section is called resistance. Now, what resistance is the refusal to accept or comply with a concept, idea, ideology, or movement. It is also the attempt to prevent something by action or argument, and the ability to not be affected by the action or concept. According to the third law of motion by Isaac Newton, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So let's explore that. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Pendulum goes this way, it's got to come back down this way. Alright? So, don't get me wrong, there are certain types of healthy resistance, but the majority of resistance that this planet seems to understand is violent resistance. And this is the very sort of resistance that kind of needs to be thrown out the window, because if you are going to resist against something as ubiquitous and as monstrous as the quote-unquote New World Order, you're not going to be able to do it with guns and violence. Why? For every little 9mm that you have, they have machine guns. For every machine gun you have, they've got missiles. And then it goes on and on and on. So, satellites, lasers, all of its weaponry. And the fact is, they've got more of that weaponry than you, and then they've got highly trained people that can step right in and fight at a moment's notice. They are made of violence. They train for violence. So if you're going to try to meet violence with violence, especially against something as big as the New World Order, chances are you're in a losing battle. As I've stated before in several other videos, there are multiple non-violent ways to create resistance. In fact, there are multiple non-violent ways to actually completely destroy what is known as the New World Order. I've given out some of those concepts as well, but whatever. So we live in a time where we believe that the majority, the overwhelming amount of population believes that the best way to meet the New World Order is with violence. As I said before, I highly disagree. I think that is the wrong route. So revisiting the idea that every action has an equal and opposite reaction, with this in mind, the action of resistance is certain to generate a reaction of equal magnitude. Okay, so depending on the severity of the situation, whatever it is that you intend to do in terms of resistance will probably be met with more resistance. Now, given the fact that these people own the media, own the military, own the telecommunications systems that we use, own the oil that we need to fill up our cars with, they seem to own all the technologies of which mankind consumes willingly. Therefore, if you intend to go against a Leviathan and resist them by using means of which they control the resources to, more than likely you will find yourself in a losing battle. When one reacts in the spirit of resistance, typically it is due to the perception that one has lost influence or control. And oftentimes when people believe that they lose control, that's when anger rises and mistakes are made. If one is going to resist in any way, shape, or form, one has to define for themselves what element of control they have supposedly lost within this situation. They have to understand what it is they have vested in the situation in the first place. Given the fact that humans are constantly at odds with one another due to the fact that mankind always attempts to control the private lives of each other, before we blame the elites for our perceived loss of control, before we blame them, we have to look and see how much we've contributed to the issue ourselves, and then we have to determine if we had ever lost control to begin with, or if the elites had ever gained control to begin with. See, the thing is the elites do everything on a perceptual level, which is the reason why they need the media to show us killings. They need the media to show us that the politicians are either not on our side or on our side. They need all of these things to wire the perception of the masses in order to create their own movements. Now, like I said, one of the key things to look at here is, what have you really lost? In terms of the New World Order, at this moment, do you have handcuffs around you? Does the military show up every single day to your home doing inspections? Do you have the police there all the time giving you drug tests and whatnot? Chances are, if you're from any Western nation, the answer is no, unless you're a convicted felon. So you have to decide, number one, am I really living in a totalitarian world? There are places where they do live in totalitarianism. There truly is. Like, for instance, Libya, when we went out there and blew the place to bits and then unleashed a whole bunch of terrorists upon the soil. Those people live under totalitarian rule now. We blasted them back to the third world. We went out there and raped, sodomized, and destroyed anything that we could find. And then once we had thoroughly, completely taken everything from every last single person that was there, that is when the U.S. decided to go ahead and continue to fund radical Islamists known as terrorists, and then set them loose upon that country in order to rape and pillage some more and terrorize the citizenry. That is what the United States did. Regardless of what people think, regardless of what people believe when it comes to their patriotic duties, that is what actually happened. Let's understand what the idea of resistance actually does. Okay, because resistance creates friction, it creates opposition, it creates contempt, it also creates subjugation, which often goes against a particular flow. In martial arts, one of the best concepts that there is using the counterforce, or the force of the opponent against them. So once you're being attacked, you use leverage, and then you use the amount of force that the opponent is actually using against you in order to redirect the energy. So if you were able to apply that towards something like the New World Order, and there are ways to apply it, then you're probably going to have much more success in your results. If you try to butt heads with something like this, it's kind of like an ant butting heads with a ram. That's not going to work. Or with a buffalo. Not going to work. The buffalo's bigger, far more massive, a lot stronger, and it has force, inertia. When it gets started and it charges at something, whatever's in front of it's going to pay a toll. So an ant certainly is not going to be able to do much of anything but get stepped on. So how you work your resistance is going to be dependent upon the polarity that you are actually choosing. For instance, as in martial arts, as opposed to pushing when an opponent pushes first, one learns to flow with that momentum. Okay? And then once the opponent at that point loses their orientation and their balance, that's when the capitalization of that situation occurs. One of the most powerful things that the elites have control over in this system is the monetary system. If the elites created a monetary system for them to be able to control, then if one is smart enough, they can take that advantage and use the monetary system to turn things into their own favor. We have the ability and many ways to fund whatever we choose to fund. We can funnel our money, we have the freedom to funnel our money wherever we want. Sure, through taxes they take certain elements of our money and then they place it into whatever categories that they want to place it into, but the excess amount is ours, and we could literally funnel it to where we choose. As I've stated before, you don't want Walmart on top, don't shop at Walmart. You want to see the mom and pop shops shoot up, so it gives you more of a variety than just one big megalithic store. Then you take and funnel your money to the mom and pop shops. It is really that simple. When it comes to gasoline, stop using it. Start riding bikes. Only use vehicles when you absolutely have to. You would be surprised that if every single person on this planet decided not to go to work for one day, it would cripple the entire planet. It would cripple the monetary system entirely. One day. If every single person decided not to use gasoline and stayed at home and didn't drive their vehicle for one day, that would create such a dent in the monetary system to the elites that they wouldn't know what to do. It would create a frenzy. If people chose collectively across the United States not to shop for one day, the elites would be on their knees. Now imagine if you chose to do all those things in the same day. So there's plenty of ways to resist without firing a shot. There's plenty of ways to resist without throwing a punch. There's plenty of ways to resist without pushing yourself towards a negative, more violent polarity.